Years had passed since Dr. Alexander Hayes had first arrived at St. Mary's Hospital. Grayhaven had changed: new buildings, new families, new faces in the corridors. But some things remained the same: the lighthouse on the cliff, the scent of salt in the air, the endless rhythm of the ocean. Now, those who remembered him spoke of him not as the handsome doctor, but as a man who had quietly shaped lives. He had taught more than medicine. He had taught patience, compassion, and courage. From the perspective of a young intern, sitting in the same garden where Hayes had once walked with Olivia, the stories sounded almost like legend. They spoke of the night of the storm, when a boy's life had hung in the balance and a man had risen above fear to save him. They spoke of the quiet hours of teaching, the gentle guidance in the operating room, the steady hands that never wavered. Yet it was not only the triumphs that were remembered. It was the grace with which he bore loss. The way he carried the memory of those he had loved and lost without bitterness, letting it shape him rather than define him. It was the laughter that returned slowly after years of silence, the calm in the face of chaos, the presence that could soothe the restless heart of a hospital and a town alike. Even the garden seemed to honor him. The roses he had planted with Olivia bloomed each year with an effortless wildness, as if reaching toward the sky in quiet celebration. The ocean continued its eternal rhythm, echoing the heartbeat he had taught so many to trust. Olivia, now older and wiser, would often pause by the bench where they had once shared long silences. She would think of him, of the man who had carried both sorrow and hope, and had emerged not just alive, but fully human. She knew he had saved countless lives, but more importantly, he had saved the hearts of those who watched him, who learned from him, who followed him. And somewhere beyond the horizon, it seemed that Alexander Hayes himself was at peace. Not because life had been perfect, but because he had chosen to stay, to care, to love quietly, and to let the small miracles unfold. The lighthouse turned its beam slowly over the sea. It had done so for generations, a steady reminder that light can guide even the darkest nights. And in the echo of that light, the people of Grayhaven remembered him not as a fleeting face, but as a presence, a force of quiet grace that had touched the lives of all who had known him. Time moves on. Storms pass. Waves return to the shore. But the heart of a life well lived leaves a mark that does not fade. Alexander Hayes had once been the handsome doctor. Now, he was legend. And in every healed patient, every calm night, every whispered story in the halls of St. Mary's, his echo remained steady, enduring, and full of light. Years had settled over Grayhaven like a gentle tide. The town had grown, yet the core remained familiar, the ocean stretching endlessly, the lighthouse keeping its slow, eternal watch, and St. Mary's Hospital humming quietly with life. Dr. Alexander Hayes had become not just a doctor, but a mentor. Young interns and new nurses looked to him for guidance, often amazed at how calm and composed he remained, even in emergencies that would unnerve even the most seasoned professionals. Olivia Carter had become head nurse and part of the hospital's leadership. She carried herself with quiet authority, tempered by years of experience, but still retained that warmth that had drawn people to her. Together, they had transformed St. Mary's into a place where compassion and excellence coexisted, where patients felt seen, not just treated. Yet, even as life moved steadily forward, time weighed on them both. Alex often felt the subtle ache of years, aches of long shifts, moments lost, and lives that could not be saved. But he no longer carried guilt. He had learned to accept that medicine, like life, is a mixture of victories and losses. And losses, he knew, teach lessons that victories never could. One autumn evening, as the sky burned orange and pink, he walked the corridors alone, checking on patients and staff alike. The hospital was quieter than usual, and he paused by the children's ward, watching young faces sleep peacefully. It struck him then that life's beauty often comes in fleeting moments, small and quiet, like the way sunlight fell across the linoleum floor, or the soft sound of distant waves. Olivia joined him there. They walked together in silence, their hands brushing occasionally, a small, steady reminder of their shared life and quiet love. Neither needed to speak. The years had taught them that presence often matters more than words. Outside, the wind carried the scent of salt and fallen leaves. Alex took a deep breath and allowed himself to feel the weight of all he had been through, not as a burden, but as the shape of a life fully lived. Grayhaven, St. Mary's, and the people they had touched were the proof that time, though relentless, could also be kind. And in the gentle rhythm of life around them, Alex and Olivia knew they were still walking the path they had chosen together, not just surviving, but living deeply and intentionally. Grayhaven had grown in both population and complexity, and so had St. Mary's Hospital. Young doctors and nurses arrived from across the country, eager and idealistic, bringing fresh knowledge, new techniques, and energy that seemed almost reckless compared to the calm that Alex had cultivated over the years. Alex observed them with quiet attention. He saw talent, yes, but also hesitation, fear, and impatience. He moved among them like a steady current, guiding hands and offering wisdom learned through triumphs and failures alike. Olivia, now a pillar of the hospital, coordinated the staff with grace, ensuring that the influx of new faces became a strength rather than chaos. Together, she and Alex maintained balance, blending mentorship, patience, and subtle discipline. Yet the years had not removed all challenges. A new case arrived that tested everything Alex had learned. A young mother with a rare cardiac condition, requiring an intricate surgery unlike anything the hospital staff had attempted. The complexity of the case reminded him of nights long ago, when failure had threatened to define his life. But now, he approached it differently. He felt the calm confidence of a man who had seen storms pass and survived, who had learned that preparation, patience, and trust in those around him could save more than one life at a time. Through the surgery, the interns watched, mesmerized by his steadiness, his skill, and the unspoken authority he carried. The operation succeeded, and as the patient stabilized, Alex felt a quiet satisfaction, the kind that doesn't demand applause, but lingers in the heart, like a song you remember after the music has stopped. Outside the hospital, life continued its rhythm. The town thrived with festivals, markets, and quiet mornings by the sea. And while new faces came and went, Alex and Olivia remained Constance's quiet anchors in a world of motion, a symbol that some connections, some partnerships, endure. Years turned into decades. Grayhaven matured alongside its hospital, and St. Mary's became renowned not for its size or technology, but for its heart for the culture of compassion Alex and Olivia had nurtured. Alex walked the halls with slower steps now, his hair fully silvered and his hands carrying the gentle tremor of age. Yet his eyes remained sharp, bright with the same calm intensity that had first drawn admiration years before. Olivia, beside him as always, carried herself with quiet pride, a woman who had lived fully, loved deeply, and left an indelible mark on the lives of everyone she met. Together, they were not merely caretakers of health, but keepers of hope. The garden they had once tended together flourished wildly. Roses bloomed every year, as if reaching toward the sun to honor the years of care and love that had shaped them. Children of former patients played beneath the trees, unaware of the history embedded in the petals and branches around them. Alex often stood at the hospital's observation deck, watching the sun rise over the ocean. Each wave reminded him of the passage of time, of the lives he had touched, and of the people who had left their marks on him. He felt the weight of years, but not with regret. Every challenge, every storm, every life saved or lost had led to this a life full, deep, and meaningful. Olivia joined him one morning, her hand brushing his. No words were necessary. They had long learned that silence could speak louder than any confession. Together, they watched the tide, the lighthouse sweeping its steady beam over the shore, and the world waking around them. In that moment, Alex understood fully what he had come to Grayhaven to find: not redemption, not fame, not even love alone, but a life illuminated by presence, care, and the steady light of someone who walks beside you through every storm. The hospital would continue, the town would endure, and the people whose lives had been touched by their hands would carry their legacy forward. The handsome doctor and the steadfast nurse had become something more than a story whispered in the hallways. They were a guiding light, proof that lives, when lived with courage and compassion, ripple outward forever. And as the sun kissed the horizon, the ocean reflecting every hue of the sky, Alex and Olivia stood together, silent, content, and luminous, the legacy of their lives shining quietly, like a lighthouse across generations. Years had become familiar companions in Grayhaven, wrapping the town and its people in the gentle rhythm of continuity. St. Mary's Hospital hummed steadily, a living monument to the countless hands and hearts that had passed through its doors. Within its walls, Dr. Alexander Hayes moved with a calm that came from decades of experience, a serenity hard-earned, shaped by storms both literal and figurative. The seasons turned predictably, yet each brought subtle reminders of the passage of time. Spring offered blooms in the garden he and Olivia had tended for years. Summer carried the laughter of children playing along the shore. Autumn painted the horizon in shades of fire, and winter whispered stillness into every quiet corridor. New challenges continued to arrive, unannounced and urgent. A rare infectious outbreak tested the hospital's resilience, demanding organization, swift decisions, and unwavering composure. Alex met each case not with fear, but with the steady assurance that had become his signature. His calm inspired the new generation of doctors and nurses, teaching them that courage was not absence of doubt, but presence of focus amidst uncertainty. Olivia remained his steadfast partner not only in the hospital, but in life. Together, they had learned the quiet language of shared glances, subtle gestures, and the enduring strength of simply being present for one another. There was no need for grand declarations. Their love had matured into a comfort that carried both gravity and lightness, like the tide returning to the shore after every storm. One evening, after a particularly long day, Alex stood on the hospital terrace overlooking the sea. The waves moved endlessly, relentless and gentle, a reminder that life itself never truly stops. He thought of every patient, every life saved, every moment that had left a mark on him, the weight of it all, tempered by gratitude and acceptance. The garden below, illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns, seemed alive with memory. Roses he and Olivia had planted years ago swayed gently in the breeze, and the young interns working late in the hospital occasionally paused to admire them, unaware of the history rooted in their blooms. He realized then that true strength was not only in the hands that heal, but in the patience to endure, to guide, and to nurture. Legacy was not fame or recognition, it was the quiet influence that shaped lives, the unseen threads woven into the fabric of a community, the reassurance that even in uncertainty, someone cared enough to stand steady. Olivia joined him silently, her presence beside him as natural as the rising tide. They stood together, watching the horizon fade from gold to deep indigo. The lighthouse swept its beam across the ocean, steadfast as ever, a silent guardian in the night. Alex understood fully that life's purpose was not simply survival, nor the triumphs celebrated in moments of glory. It was in the continuous acts of care, the patient guidance of others, the quiet endurance of storms, and the presence of someone who walks beside you through the shifting tides. And as the night settled over Grayhaven, with stars scattered across the sky like distant lanterns, Alexander Hayes felt a profound peace. He had walked through darkness and emerged whole. He had loved, lost, and chosen again, and in that choice, he had found eternity. The handsome doctor, once a figure of fleeting admiration, had become a constant, a quiet strength, and a legacy that would ripple through Grayhaven for generations.